Let's talk about this file manipulation system calls. So why do a process require a file manipulation system calls is, in many cases a process will take the input from a file and it will write the output onto a file. If you look at some operating systems like Linux, everything in a Linux is a file. For example, keyboard is a file and the monitor is also a file. Every device will be considered as a file in some operating systems. Therefore, it is mandatory that a process gets access to the file in order to take the input as well as write the output. So sometimes let me talk about one other topic here. It is not related to this, but if you understand it, it will be easier for you. So processes can be run in two modes. One is interactive mode and the other one is batch processing mode. So what is interactive mode is, we'll start executing a program, and while the program is being executed, we cannot run anything else. Therefore, the process will be running in the foreground. That is called foreground. Foreground means not in the background. And as long as the process doesn't get finished, you will not be able to do any other things, right? Then what happens is, when you're running it, whenever the process wants some input, it will just ask you and you can provide it by typing through the let's say keyboard, or by using the mouse, or by any other means you can provide the input to the process, right? And sometimes what happens is, we'll provide 10 or 15 programs, or let's say many programs, let's not take any number. We'll provide a large number of programs as an input to our operating system, and we'll ask it to execute, and then these processes will be executed in the background. That is called as batch processing. And while we are doing batch processing, if any process needs some input, it cannot ask the user because it is not visible to the user. It is being executed in the background while the user is doing something else. This process will be executed in the background and it will not be visible for the user. So in that case, only way the process can take the input or provide the output is by using the files. Therefore, every process in general needs access to the files, right? And these processes are generally written by the user, and the files will be controlled by the operating system. Now, whenever anything is controlled by the operating system, the only way we can ask is by making system calls. Therefore, every operating system is supposed to provide some system calls, right? Okay, let's say this is the process, and then operating system is there, and then file is there. A process cannot access a file directly. In order to access the file, process has to call the operating system by the means of system calls. Once it calls the operating system by the means of system calls, then operating system will grant the access for this file. Then only the process knows where the file is and how to access it. And in order to complete all these things, right, there are different types of requests a process can make for a file. So every operating system in general is supposed to provide at least certain system calls to handle such functions. Now what are they? See this. The basic one is to create a file and delete a file. So a process should be able to create a file and delete a file. And how to create and delete a file, that is dependent on the specific implementation. For example, in C you might have seen the system calls, which are included as a high level language constructs, which are actually system calls. You can create the file and delete the file, right? And similarly, you want to open a file which is already created, or close a file, right? Sometimes you want to close a file which is already opened if your work is done. Even if you don't, most of the systems are done like this. Even if you don't close the file, when you end the process, automatically it will be closed. And next one is, you want to read something from the file, or you want to write something from the file, or you want to do some repositioning. So what is repositioning is, if you have a file, then if you are trying to read from it, always operating system will maintain a pointer. This pointer will show what are the bytes you have read till now, and what is the next byte you are supposed to read. Okay, so that is how you can read the file sequentially. See, what happens is, when you open a file for reading, maybe you'll start from the beginning and you'll read few lines, and if you don't remember till how many lines you have read, and if you try to read it again, instead of reading from the next part, you will again read the same part. That is why every file is going to maintain something called as file pointer. Okay, and the name of this file pointer also varies from system to system, therefore you need not by heart it. Now this file pointer will be pointing to the next byte that has to be read, or the location where it has to be written, a byte has to be written. So maintaining it is very important. And sometimes we want to skip certain bytes and we want to jump directly to certain parts of the file. That one is called as seek. So in C we call it as seek. But there are various languages and various platforms use different names, but in general it is also called as repositioning, or in C we are going to use seek. If you have worked with C programming and files, you must be knowing this, but it is not required for Git anyway. Okay, so just try to understand these general terms. So reposition is nothing but we are trying to change the pointer in the file so that we can skip some of the bytes. Okay, and the next function call is related to get file attributes and set file attributes. So there will be various things like who is the owner of the file, that is an attribute, or what is the size of the file, right, or when is it created, the date of creation, the date of modification, what are the permissions, all those things. Sometimes you want to know such things, then you can use get file attributes, right. So for every file there will be a structure, and then all the information will be written in that structure, and when you try to get it, you are going to read the structure, and then you can know what are all the fields or what is information about the file. And sometimes if you are the owner of the file, you will be given the permission to change the attributes, file attributes. You can do that, right. So what is the main intention of this thing is, every operating system when it is being designed, it should provide some system calls for the user to do all these actions, otherwise the operating system will not be complete. Okay.